All right, get ready because we're about to jump into something pretty wild today.
Definitely wild.
Yeah, this research paper, it's called OmniPred, Language Models as Universal Regressors.
Kitschy title.
It is catchy, right? And it's about using language models, but not in the way you'd think.
Yeah, not like chatbots or writing poems or anything like that.
Right, it's about using them to predict things.
And not just any things.
Yeah, universal regressors, that's a big claim.
It is a big claim.
So what exactly does that mean? Like, could we predict something like the stock market?
Potentially,
Yeah.
yeah. Or even the outcome of a scientific experiment.
Seriously,
Yeah.
just by feeding information into a language model?
That's the idea.
That's mind-blowing.
It is pretty mind-blowing, especially when you consider how we usually make predictions.
Yeah, how's that?
We typically rely on these things called regressors.
Regressors?
Yeah, think of them like formulas or algorithms specifically designed to forecast a certain outcome.
Okay, so like the models they use for weather forecasting?
Exactly. A weather forecasting model is a type of regressor.
Uses current weather data to try to predict tomorrow's temperature.
Yep, spot on. But here's the thing about traditional regressors.
What's that?
They tend to be very specialized.
Specialized how?
Well, for one, they need data in a very specific format.
Like a perfectly organized spreadsheet or something.
Exactly. And even a tiny change to how that data is presented can totally throw them off.
Huh, so they're kind of picky.
Yeah, you could say that. Plus, they're usually only good for one specific type of prediction.
So you'd need a different regressor to predict stock prices versus, say, I don't know, the result of a chemical reaction.
Exactly. They're kind of like a toolbox full of different wrenches.
Each one designed for just one specific nut or bolt.
Perfect analogy.
So where does OmniPred fit into all of this?
Well, OmniPred is more like having an adjustable wrench.
Ah, one that can adapt to different situations.
Precisely. And that's what makes this research so fascinating.
So instead of rigid data formats, OmniPred uses text as its input.
It's like feeding information to the model in the form of a story or a description.
Wait, so instead of plugging numbers into a spreadsheet, we're feeding words into a language model.
Exactly.
How does that even work?
It's kind of like giving a chef a recipe.
Okay,
The recipe's written in a language the chef understands, right?
right.
And based on that information, they can create a dish.
So OmniPred is processing information like a chef reading a recipe.
In a way, yeah, it takes information about something, let's say the design of a new airplane wing,
Okay.
converts it into the special text format.
A textual recipe.
Yeah, and then the model processes that and outputs a prediction also encoded in a specific text format.
Fascinating. But how does a language model usually trained on like books and articles learn to make predictions about things like airplane wings?
Right, that's where the magic of multitask learning comes in.
Multitask learning.
Yeah, so the researchers trained OmniPred on this massive data set called Google Vizier.
Google Vizier, what's that?
It's this huge collection of results from millions of different experiments across tons of scientific disciplines.
So they're basically feeding the model an encyclopedia of how different systems work.
Basically, yeah, and the outcomes of all sorts of different experiments.
Wow, and by learning from this massive data set, OmniPred can pick up on patterns that traditional regressors would miss.
Exactly. It's like the difference between learning from a single textbook versus having access to an entire library.
Okay, so OmniPred has this incredible knowledge base, but the big question is, does it actually work? Can it make accurate predictions about things it's never seen before?
That's what the researchers wanted to find out, and the results are pretty amazing.
Really?
Yeah, they started with some standard benchmark tests, mathematical functions that are used to evaluate prediction models.
Okay.
And OmniPred was able to accurately capture the shapes of these functions, showing it really understood the underlying mathematical relationship.
So it wasn't just spitting out random numbers?
Nope, it was showing a real grasp of the problem, but then they took it a step further.
Oh, how so?
They tested OmniPred on real-world examples, things like image classification, predicting the performance of machine learning models, even protein design.
Protein design. That's a huge leap from predicting the outcome of a math problem.
I know, right? And what's even more impressive is that OmniPred did well on all these tasks.
So it's not limited to one specific area or type of problem?
Exactly. It's like having a student who excels in math, science, and literature.
They're able to connect concepts and apply their knowledge in different situations.
Precisely, and that's what makes OmniPred so powerful.
This whole idea of transferring knowledge from one area to another is fascinating.
Right.
Is that what they mean by transfer learning in this research?
You got it. Transfer learning is key to OmniPred's ability to make these predictions about new and unseen problems.
So the more diverse data OmniPred is trained on, the better it gets at predicting even things it's never encountered before.
Exactly. And to really test this idea of transfer learning, the researchers did a really interesting experiment.
What did they do?
They took some of the data OmniPred was trained on and removed all the meaningful textual information, leaving just the numbers.
So they made the data more abstract, harder to interpret.
Right. And guess what happened?
I'm guessing OmniPred didn't do so well.
You guessed it, its performance tanked.
So the language itself, the way the information is described, is actually crucial for OmniPred's learning process.
It seems that way. It's not just about crunching numbers. It's about understanding the meaning and context behind those numbers.
Like the difference between reading a raw data table versus a scientific paper that explains the significance of that data.
Exactly. The language helps connect the dots and see the bigger picture.
So we've got this powerful new tool, but how does it actually compare to the traditional prediction methods? Is it always better or does it depend?
That's a great question. And the answer is it depends.
On what?
Well, the specific task and the amount of data available?
So there are times when those specialized tools are still the best option.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to prediction.
But OmniPred offers a new and potentially very powerful approach.
And one that could be especially useful when we have limited data or when the problem is very complex.
Like having a new tool in our arsenal, one that can handle situations where the old tools might not be enough.
Exactly. But what if we could make this new tool even more specialized?
Oh, you mean like fine-tune it for specific challenges?
You got it. And that's what we'll explore next.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's dive into the details of this fine-tuning process and see how it can push the boundaries of what OmniPred can do.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's get to it. So we left off talking about fine-tuning this amazing OmniPred model.
Yeah, it's like we've got this incredible Swiss Army knife of prediction models, right? But how do we make it even sharper?
Exactly. And that's where fine-tuning comes in. Like imagine you've got that Swiss Army knife,
Okay.
and it's got a blade that can cut through almost anything.
Right, a real all-purpose blade.
But what if you wanted to do something more delicate, like some intricate carving?
You'd probably want to sharpen that blade to a finer point, right?
Exactly. You want to specialize it a bit, and fine-tuning OmniPred is kind of like that.
So you're saying fine-tuning is like giving OmniPred a specialized edge for a specific task.
Let's say you're trying to predict how effective a new cancer drug will be.
Okay.
You could take OmniPred, which has already learned all these general patterns about how drugs work in the body.
Right, from that massive Google Vizier dataset.
Exactly. And then you could fine-tune it on a data set specifically related to cancer treatment.
So it's like taking a student who already has a strong foundation in science and then giving them specialized training in oncology.
Perfect analogy. They
Yeah.
can leverage their existing knowledge and apply it to a very specific area of medicine.
And this fine-tuning actually makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, the research shows it can significantly improve accuracy, especially when dealing with data that's very different from what OmniPred was originally trained on.
That's really impressive. So fine-tuning seems essential to really get the most out of OmniPred.
Definitely. But I think there's an even bigger takeaway here.
What's that?
This research suggests we might be moving away from needing a separate prediction model for every single task.
So instead of a toolbox full of specialized wrenches,
We might be able to develop more general-purpose prediction engines like OmniPred that can adapt to a wider range of problems.
it's almost like having a universal translator for data.
I like that, a model that can understand information from all sorts of different fields, finance, scientific measurements, social media trends.
And make predictions based on all of it.
Precisely. And that potential is huge. Think about scientific research for a second.
Okay.
Imagine using OmniPred to predict the outcome of a complex experiment before even setting foot in a lab.
That would be incredible. Researchers could save so much time and resources.
Exactly. They could focus on the most promising avenues of research instead of running tons of trial and error experiments.
It would be like having a research assistant who can analyze mountains of data and tell you which experiments are most likely to lead to a breakthrough.
Exactly. And it's not just about making research more efficient. We could also use OmniPred to explore completely new areas of science.
Design experiments that wouldn't have been possible to even imagine before.
Exactly. Now let's step outside the lab for a moment.
Okay, where to?
How about the business world? Imagine using OmniPred to predict which marketing campaigns will be most successful.
Or which product designs will resonate with customers.
Exactly. It's like having a crystal ball for business decisions.
You could minimize risk and maximize your chances of success.
Exactly. And we've already talked about healthcare, but imagine using OmniPred to personalize treatment plans,
Based on a patient's individual genetic makeup and lifestyle.
or to predict which patients are most likely to respond well to certain drugs.
It's amazing to think about how this technology could improve people's lives in so many different ways.
It really is, but of course, there are some big challenges to think about too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Building and deploying these models in the real world is a huge undertaking.
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges is the data.
You need massive amounts of high-quality data to train these models right.
Right. Even the smartest student needs good textbooks and teachers.
And getting all that data organized and making sure it's accurate and relevant, that's a big job.
It is. And then there's the computational power required to actually train and run these models.
We're talking serious number crunching here.
We are, which can be expensive and use a lot of energy.
So even though we've got the theoretical framework, there are still some practical hurdles to overcome.
Definitely. But there's another challenge that's just as important.
Oh, what's
Interpretability.
interpretability?
Yeah. OmniPred has shown some incredible results, but it can be hard to understand why it makes the predictions. It does.
It's kind of a black box. You put information in, you get a prediction out, but you don't always know what happened in between.
Exactly. And if people are going to trust these predictions and make important decisions based on them,
They need to understand how the model arrived at its conclusions.
exactly, it's not enough to just have a powerful tool. You need to be able to explain how it works and why you should trust it.
It's like any new invention, right? People were hesitant to trust cars when they first came out.
Exactly. They needed to see how they worked,
Yeah.
understand the safety mechanisms before they felt comfortable riding in them.
And it's the same with this kind of technology. We need to find ways to make these models more transparent.
We do. We need to be able to see how they're processing information and making decisions, and researchers are working on that.
They're developing ways to visualize the inner workings of the model.
Exactly, because ultimately, for this technology to be truly transformative, it needs to be something that people understand and trust.
And to do that, we need to communicate better. We need to explain these complex technologies to the public, address their concerns, and build trust.
Absolutely. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we use it and the impact it has on society. And that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it. We've got some thought-provoking questions from our listeners about the societal implications of this technology.
We do, and we'll dive into those next.
Sounds good. Stay tuned, everyone. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into OmniPred.
This language model that's changing the game when it comes to prediction.
We've talked about how it works and some of its potential applications.
But now it's time to tackle the big question.
The one that's on everyone's mind. How will this technology shape our world?
Yeah, and we've got some great questions from our listeners that get right to the heart of that.
Okay, hit me with the first one.
All right, so one listener asks, if OmniPred can predict things like the success of a business idea, are we heading towards a future where AI is calling all the shots?
That's a question that I think a lot of people are worried about.
Definitely, it's easy to imagine a scenario where these powerful models start making decisions for us, leaving humans out of the loop.
So is that where we're headed? A future where we just hand over the reins to AI?
I don't think so. I think it's important to remember that these models are tools.
Tools that we control.
Exactly. They can provide insights and make recommendations, but ultimately it's still up to humans to make the decisions and take action.
So it's not about replacing human judgment, it's about enhancing it.
Right. Giving us more information to work with, helping us see patterns we might have missed.
Like having a super-powered research assistant.
Exactly, one that can sift through tons of data and highlight the important stuff.
But it's still the human who has to decide what to do with that information.
Exactly. And I think this collaboration between humans and AI has the potential to be really powerful, much more so than either could achieve alone.
Okay, so AI as a partner, not a dictator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next question?
Okay, this one is a bit more philosophical.
Oh, let's hear it.
A listener asks, if we can predict almost anything, does that mean we don't have free will? Is our future predetermined?
Whoa, now that's a deep one.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what it means to be human, to have agency to make choices.
It's a question that's been around for centuries, and there's no easy answer. But I think it's important to remember that prediction is not the same as predetermination.
Just because we can predict something doesn't mean it's inevitable.
Exactly. Think about weather forecasting.
Okay.
We can predict with pretty good accuracy whether it's going to rain tomorrow.
Right, but that doesn't mean we can't choose to stay inside or grab an umbrella.
Exactly. We still have choices. And I think the ability to predict things, to understand the world better, can actually enhance our sense of free will.
How so?
Because the more information we have, the better choices we can make. If we can anticipate problems, we can prepare for them. If we can identify opportunities, we can seize them.
It's like having a roadmap, but we still get to choose the destination and the route we take.
Exactly. And even the best prediction models aren't perfect.
There's always an element of surprise, the unpredictable nature of life.
Right, and that's what keeps things interesting. I think this interplay between prediction and choice, between understanding the possibilities and shaping our own path, that's what makes life so meaningful.
I love that. So it's not about surrendering our free will to these models. It's about using them to make more informed choices.
Exactly, to navigate the complexities of life with a little more insight.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have from the technical details of OmniPred to the philosophical implications of prediction.
And it's clear that this technology has the potential to reshape our world in profound ways.
It does, but it's up to us to use it wisely and responsibly, to be mindful of the ethical considerations and make sure it benefits all of humanity.
It's a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
Exactly, and we need to be having these conversations now to make sure we're steering this technology in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into OmniPred.
It's been a pleasure.
We've explored the incredible possibilities of this technology and grappled with some of the big questions it raises.
And hopefully sparked some interesting conversations along the way.
If you're listening and you have more questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you.
Definitely keep the conversation going.
And in the meantime, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.